Are good leaders born or are they made? What we know is that it takes all kinds of experiences to lead, especially in the social sector. Welcome to The Ripple Effect. I'm Caroline Broadhurst, Deputy Chief Executive at the Rank Foundation. In this series, I'll be speaking with leaders from across the UK, learning what led them to work in the social sector and what shaped them into the inspiring leaders they are today. In this episode, which falls in National Trustees Week, I had the pleasure of speaking with Jo Ropner, Lord Lieutenant of North Yorkshire and a Rank Foundation trustee. Jo shared the pivotal moment that inspired her lifelong dedication to helping others and explained how she has instilled these values in her children. She also discussed the King's Award for Voluntary Service, highlighting the exciting opportunity to recognise volunteers with such a prestigious honour. We started by talking about where Jo grew up.
We lived in the north of Scotland, half time, and then the other half in Edinburgh. It was pretty perfect. I was very, very lucky. We were all quite feral, quite wild. But I feel very blessed, actually.
And what did you hope to do? Were you going to go into study or work? What were your plans as a child?
It seems really archaic. I'm sure my father thought I was going to marry and have children and make marmalade. But I did have different views to that. And I really wanted to find out what was out there. And I certainly had no intention of settling down and having children and making marmalade at that stage.
And so you went to Newcastle University?
I was at school in St Andrews, and then the last 2 years, my father moved me to, at that point, I think he realised that actually I wanted to go to university. And so he removed me and put me to a boys' school in England. I'd never been to England. So we took a train down from Inverness and arrived at this boys' school where there was 100 girls and 600 boys. So that was interesting. And I think from there was a huge amount of eyes being opened. And I realised actually that to go to university was exactly what I wanted to do.
And what did you do there?
I read agriculture and food marketing.
Brilliant. You enjoy that?
Loved it. I got a job, literally, I graduated and I was working 10 days later. So it was really just as it should have been.
But there was a pivotal moment that set you on the path to charitable work. Can you tell us about the accident when you were aged 22?
So I married my wonderful husband, Robert, in July and was driving to work early on the 16th of December, 4 months after having been married. And I came round a corner, hit black ice and hit a 10-ton agricultural wagon. And he then skidded on the same ice and landed basically on top of the car, landing, I guess, probably at about my knees. I was trapped in the car. This was before or just at the beginning of mobile telephones. But there happened to be 3 Royal Army Medical Corps soldiers who had arrived on the scene almost straight away. And in those days, they weren't meant to hook up plasma to civilians, but they realised that if they didn't, then I really wasn't going to survive. I had double pneumothorax, so both lungs, ruptured spleen, compound fracture of the femur, both legs broken. I mean, it was pretty much everything. And so they hooked me up to plasma and kept me going until the fire brigade came. And then my poor new husband signed the papers off saying that he agreed to my right leg being amputated if they needed to. And luckily they didn't. And 4 months in hospital. I had a caliper on for another 2 months after that. And then it was really recovering, trying to get back to normal.
What was that process, that recovery process like for you?
Well, I'm not very good at sitting still. So to be tied to a bed for 4 months, literally with my leg, of course, your lungs heal relatively quickly. And the surgeon came and spoke to me about my femur. And he said that he couldn't pin and plate it because the femur had broken the skin. So he told me very cheerfully that he'd scrubbed the ends of my bones with ether and he would come in every day and manipulate them until they were in a straight line, and then I would be put up into suspension and they're in traction, and that's really how it was. So it made me understand suddenly how helpless I was and how much I relied on other people's kindness really to help me through it.
So what was driving you to push yourself to get better when it was really tough?
I never thought I was going to die. I think everybody else did, but it never crossed my mind. And I just got married. I had my whole life in front of me, and I really wanted to get back to normal. And also was very aware of the fact that it was a pretty horrendous start for Robert to marry to marry me and then to land up actually becoming my nurse.
So that perhaps inspired you to become more involved in volunteering, appreciating those other people who were supporting you?
Yeah, there was one of the moments which I still remember very clearly was realizing how much pleasure and joy I actually got out of doing things for other people when I came out of hospital. And I remember the local vicar coming to see me, and I had this terrible anxiety because I thought, if I am getting pleasure out of doing good for other people, does that mean it's wrong for me to do it? And he said, no. He said, I think actually it's a double win. He said, you just continue doing what you're doing. And so I did.
That's lovely. So what was your first step into the charitable sector after being inspired by the help you received?
It was meeting a man called Michael Abrahams, who was a trustee of the Rank Foundation. And he was a very philanthropic person, and he lived in North Yorkshire. And he was very welcoming. And the minute that he met me, he enticed me onto some charity of a local fair, which was obviously all the money went to horses or something. I have no idea. But it really got me. And after that, he then actually was responsible for encouraging me to step up and really to see the good that one can do.
And how did you come to be a trustee of the Rank Foundation?
Well, again, it was Michael, without me knowing, introduced me to Fred Packard. And I guess I spent a day in his company without me realising what they were plotting. And it was only after that I realised, by which point I had an interview actually with Andrew Cowan. And he asked me, which was a very, very good question. He said, why should you be happy becoming a trustee of the Rank Foundation when you've been so used to being in charities where you've had to raise money? And I said, well, actually, I'm the perfect trustee because I know just how hard it is to raise money. So I will never squander a penny because I know how difficult it is to raise money and to have money in these charities.
And Fred Packard at the time, he was the chairman of the foundation, both Fred and Andrew, the grandchildren of the founder, Lord Rank.
That's absolutely correct. And I think Fred was an absolute stickler, as many of the trustees will remember. And he definitely was very good at instigating those early days. Every time we went on visits, he would insist that we wrote a report. So you really had to be on your mettle. And for some reason, I always remember we always had to remark about the lunch. Do you remember that?
It was all about the food.
Yeah.
In addition to being a trustee of the Rank Foundation, you're also the Lord Lieutenant of North Yorkshire. Tell us about how that came about.
Very sadly, the previous Lord Lieutenant was killed in a helicopter accident after only 4 years. And I had been made a Deputy Lieutenant a long time back, which was in itself a surprise because at that stage I had absolutely no idea what a Deputy Lieutenant was or indeed what a Lord Lieutenant was. And the Lord Lieutenant is the monarch's representative within the county. And so when the previous Lord Lieutenant died, the Cabinet Office came up and interviewed many of the DLs, and really came out of that. I have to say, it certainly surprised me, and I think it sure as hell surprised North Yorkshire, who'd never had a female Lord Lieutenant in their history, so it probably was quite a shock for them too.
So the first female Lord Lieutenant of North Yorkshire.
Correct.
That must be a great honour.
It's a huge honour to be the eyes and ears of now His Majesty the King. And you get up every day with a spring in your step, but you always have that feeling that you want to do the very best that you can do. So every day's a school day.
Right. And what do you do? What are some of the responsibilities of a Lord Lieutenant?
Well, the bits that probably people will know about and associate are, for example, royal visits, of which I've been lucky enough to have 2 in the last 2 days. Princess Royal yesterday, looking at an extraordinary mattress factory and going to the farm where the hemp is grown. And the other visit was with the Duke of Kent, which we managed to get him onto the roof of York Minster. So those are the highlights. And then you come across the whole spectrum where you've got King's Award for Enterprise, and then you have King's Award for Voluntary Services, you have honours, and then you have that really trying to shine a light on so many of the people and the places that need to be recognised for the good that they are doing, the unsung heroes, and also to let the palace know if something is happening or has happened. So, for example, the recent riots all across Britain. So we put together the police reports, both from the North Yorkshire side and also Cleveland, which is also under my jurisdiction. So what happened in Middlesbrough as well. So I think they really just want to be informed as to what exactly is going on in each of the counties.
Very much a leadership role on behalf of North Yorkshire. Can you tell us a little bit about your leadership style, particularly your role as a trustee?
I asked my husband this question last night, and he said he thought that it was the directness that was important. I'm not sure that's true. I think the role of a trustee is to listen and to allow everybody the same amount of time to voice what they really feel. I guess I've probably jumped to the chairman already in that role, but certainly I listen to everything that the trustees have to say and give everybody the same amount of airtime. And then there's enough bandwidth really to make, I hope, pretty much a good decision.
Are you comfortable with being called a leader?
It's a very good question. And no, I don't think anybody probably likes to be called a leader. I don't know. But you lead from the front and you hope that people naturally will look up to you if you're doing a good job. And if you're not doing a good job, then it's a bit like the England football manager, you get kicked out.
You're not going to be kicked out. As you know, Jo, we work with many leaders across the social sector, many starting out in their leadership journeys. Would you have any advice for them in terms of what you would pass on to them in developing their leadership style?
Looking at some of the young leaders within the Rank Foundation network, where we meet the most extraordinary young leaders, I think to listen, you're always going to listen to advice, but then you must make your own decision. And I think any decision going forward is good to make the decision rather than, dilly-dallying around. And I think that actually, ultimately, young leaders, they're so much more aware possibly than we all were when we were in that role. Just they've really got to continue the path, listen to others, but also have those clear decisions in their head.
So, Lord Lieutenant, trustee of the Rank Foundation and a mum, how have you passed on your core values to your children in terms of that public service?
I feel really proud that actually my 3 children and my husband by default, but I think he was doing that anyway. After having had my crash, the one thing that I felt very strongly about was that they are kind and they never leave somebody without a smile on their face. And I remember probably remonstrating to my children in supermarkets. It doesn't matter whether it's picking up a coffee or whatever it is, you literally engage with that person. Everybody has a backstory. And for me, it's very, very important that they make eye contact and that the person hopefully will be left feeling a little bit better than they were when they came in.
Lovely advice that we can all take with us. Yeah. I want to talk about people who have inspired you. Who are the people who have inspired you along the way, whether within the Rank Foundation, within the network or elsewhere?
Well, so many people have been incredibly kind to me and picked me up and pushed me on a little bit in a direction that maybe I didn't realise I was capable of going in. And obviously, Michael Abrahams would come into that one. Another one who was chairman of the Grants Committee, Charlie Shuttleworth, Lord Shuttleworth, Lord Lieutenant of Lancashire, actually.
Patch.
Your patch. They were big boots to follow. And when I became chair of the Grants Committee, I remember sitting at the table for the very first time thinking, crikey, his size 14 shoes, which he really did have size 14s, and how on earth was I ever going to measure up to somebody like Lord Shuttleworth? Because he was measured, he just had the perfect balance. And so people like that, you can take a bit of what they've got and hopefully weave it into what I have. And it makes, you're always learning, aren't you? The other person more recently that I have huge respect for and I try and meet up when I can is Bishop James Jones, who was Bishop of Liverpool at the time of the Hillsborough disaster. Him and his wife Sarah have become very close friends of ours. And if ever I need advice, then I would be very happy to pick the telephone up to him. It's difficult because when you're Order Lieutenant, people are very conscious not to tell you what you're doing wrong, or maybe some of them do for sure, but it's more difficult to get people to tell you the truth. So you always do need to have a true sounding board in somebody like James Jones.
And you've met many social sector leaders through the RankNet community?
Yes, absolutely. I love going to the conference every year because you do meet the most amazing characters. And of course, you have Dame Julia, who we all love. Again, you listen to her speaking and you hope that you can pick up some handy hints from her because of where she's gone. And actually, when you look back at her life as a lady doing it in her time, another one, Baroness Brenda Hales, who was in the justice system, a wonderful lady. It's the strong role models, particularly, obviously, as a female in a largely male world. You have to hold your own.
Absolutely. And you've also introduced us to many wonderful charities from North Yorkshire and further afield that have come into the RankNet community over the years.
Yeah, I mean, that's an honour and a blessing, really, to have been exposed to so many charities latterly through the lieutenancy, but also just in my general day-to-day life. And to be able to bring them to the notice of the execs with their beady eyes, it's good for both the charity, I guess, to have somebody else looking at how they're run and to see whether they're up for giving money to. It's very good for the charity to have a mirror put up in front of them to be able to look at themselves.
In your role as Lord Lieutenant, you've become involved with the King's Award for Voluntary Service. Now, for those who may not know, can you describe what it is?
So the King's Award, as it is now, was created in 2002 to celebrate Queen Elizabeth II's Golden Jubilee. So it was known as the QAVS, Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. And the award has been shining a light on the fantastic work of voluntary groups from across all the UK for many years, and it now continues under His Majesty's name. It is part of the UK honour system and is equivalent to an MBE, but it is for the organisation, the charity, rather than an individual. A CAVS is the highest award given to local voluntary groups in the UK, and they are awarded it for life. So it's not like the King's Award for Enterprise, which is 5 years.
And what makes an organisation eligible for the award?
I think the CAVS seeks to celebrate groups that are truly outstanding and making a huge difference to their local community. I think it's groups where volunteers, rather than paid staff, are in the driving seat. And of course, it goes without saying that the groups have the highest standard in everything they do.
How would a group go about applying for the award?
The CAVS is awarded annually, and the nominations open on the 1st of September and they close on the 1st of December. Nominations are open right now, and more information on making that nomination can be found on the cavs.dcms.gov.uk website.
So we will know, you and I and our team will know many wonderful volunteer-led organisations within the RankNet community. So this is a call to action to apply, because there's not much time.
No, there's not much time. The way it works is that the charity is nominated by somebody that knows the charity, and that goes in by the 1st of December. And then actually it goes to the lieutenancies. If it has all the right credentials, it goes to the lieutenancies of that county, and there are 2 deputy lieutenant assessors that will come and assess the charity. And then that goes into the national panel, with Sir Martin Lewis, who heads that up. So I have nothing to do with just to make it absolutely clear, I am not judge and juror. I have nothing to do with that side of it. But it's almost the kite mark of a well-run charity. And I think certainly as a trustee, if I ever see a charity that has been awarded the King's Award for Voluntary Service, then I know it's been put through its march. So it is a good charity that we should be backing.
So really important internally for that organisation to celebrate its volunteers, and also externally as validation as a really good organisation to support.
Yes, I mean, I think every year there are some that are put into the process that don't make it. And obviously it's difficult both for the assessors who feel terribly responsible, but also for the charity. And the charity can't come back and reapply for 3 years. So if there are any questions in those early yards, it's almost better to withdraw for that year and then go back in the following year when you really feel like the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed.
And if an organisation, particularly within our community, is considering an application this year, there's information on the DCMS website?
Yes, absolutely. cavs.dcms.gov.uk is the website.
Wonderful. Jo, thank you very much. It's lovely to chat with you outside of the boardroom. Always a pleasure. And let's hope we'll have lots of applications from our community.
Caroline, thank you very much indeed. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks for listening to The Ripple Effect, brought to you by the Rank Foundation and Purposeful Marketing. This episode featured Jo Ropner, Lord Lieutenant of North Yorkshire and a Rank Foundation trustee. The producers were Cass Denton, alongside Hannah Varrell and James Shield, courtesy of the Feast Collective. Tune into The Ripple Effect